You're listening to The RealWealth Show with Kathy Fettke, the real estate investor's resource.
Our guest today spent years working towards her PhD, but once she got it, she realized it wasn't really what she wanted. She and her husband shifted gears and focused on how to build a portfolio with real estate. 5 years later, they have met their goals with babies and properties and are looking forward to planning the next 5 years. I'm Kathy Fettke, and welcome to the RealWealth Show. Kim Hopkins and her husband, Ben, own and manage more than 350,000 square feet of industrial properties in Oregon, Washington, Utah, Texas, and Arizona. And Kim's here with us on the RealWealth Show to tell us how she did it. So welcome, Kim.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. I was happy to meet you, I think at the Best Ever. Is that?
Yes. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I did give you a granola bar. Just saying.
You did. Rich was going on stage and we hadn't had breakfast and I was hungry and you handed me, and he didn't eat it. I ate it for him. So it all worked out. But I'll never forget because I think you were dancing to our show intro or something.
Yes, I was. It reminded me of that scene from Dirty Dancing where she says, "I carried a watermelon." I said, "Oh, I brought you a granola bar."
Well, I am very curious, as I am with all of our guests, as to what you were doing before real estate, what made you choose it, and what you're doing now. So what were you doing before?
Sure. So I never really had a passion growing up. I said that, fashion ate my passion. I just kind of liked building things, but I didn't really know what. So I went to school with no particular idea for what I wanted to major in. And I ended up actually majoring in math.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not nearly as admirable as it sounds. You only had to show up for the tests. And you didn't have to turn in your homework. So that kind of fit my MO in college. I went to school in Santa Barbara, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Absolutely. And that's the same story I hear from my kids.
Yeah. I was more focused on sunshine and, the motto is 5 years, 5 bikes. So managed to pull it off in 4, but
perfect.
Yeah. So I got a degree in math and there was no business degree there at the time. And I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was encouraged by my math professor to keep going. And so that's what I did. I kept going. My husband and I, then boyfriend, applied to grad schools, and I ended up going to the University of Texas at Austin, and I ended up getting a PhD in mathematics.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you did study in Austin then?
Yes, I did. I did study. I did apply myself eventually. But, I always had that negotiation skill set in my back pocket. I would negotiate with the teachers to do take-home tests instead of in-person tests because that was too much pressure for me and, things like that. So
oh boy,
was always a negotiator.
Very good. Because there's stuff to do in Austin as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff to do. And also grad students are kind of like college students who are advanced at the college party part, but yeah. So there was flip cup championships and things.
Okay. You had to hone those skills as well.
Yes, I had to hone those skills as well. So yeah, I got a PhD in math. My husband, who's now my business partner, got a PhD in microbiology. And then after that, we ended up applying to professor positions because that's what you do. That's the next step. Mm-hmm. And so we applied to, I think, like 103 different universities, and it included things overseas, ETH in Zurich, McGill in Canada. I guess that's not overseas, but McGill all over the place. And we landed at UCLA. So your stomping grounds, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up professors at UCLA. And shortly after I got there, I kind of realized that my ladder was leaning against the wrong building.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a hard lesson when you've spent a lot of years climbing that ladder.
Yeah, you've been climbing that ladder and not climbing other ladders. So your resume is not beefed up in other areas. But yeah, I just realized pretty much as soon as I got there that this wasn't the lifestyle for me. I wanted to build something. I wanted to work with people. I wanted to do something that matters. I remember my professor mentor said to me at some point, oh, here's this book that's in German that's 400 years old. How about you read this and see if you can find something that hasn't been proven yet? And I was just like,
Why would I do that?
Why would I do that? And so I decided that I didn't want to be in academia anymore shortly after I got there. And it was really tough because I had no real work experience. I had taught, but I had no normal real world job experience. And so it took me almost a year to find a job. I tried taking my PhD off my resume. I tried anything, and people just wanted to put me in that research role. And then finally, I found a job listing on Craigslist for a project manager position. And I called them up and I found out that it was in the subject matter of tax credits. Yes. Yeah, right. Could you get anything that's more boring than mathematics?
So not once you're in real estate, then it works in your favor.
Funny how those dots connect looking backwards, right? And so I almost canceled the interview because I was like, I don't want to do tax credits. But I took the interview, and it was this small office of 3 dudes out of downtown Los Angeles near Pershing Square. And I wasn't sure about it. I actually got a job offer at the same time for a management consulting job that paid 3 times as much and was much more traditional. But the consulting job said that, you have to do this job, this particular role for 5 years before you can do the next step. And, then you'll be evaluated. Whereas the tax credit company was a startup, and they said your opportunity is only limited by your contribution. And and so I said, I'm in. So we did R&D tax credits, we did hiring tax credits. And anyways, I ended up writing some computer software to sort of replace myself by using YouTube videos and teaching myself how to write the program in Excel. And so then they moved me up to sales. And that's where I got my sales experience selling tax credits. And so I worked there for about 7 years. And then in 2014, we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes.
Surprise, surprise. And I said to my husband,
life-changing book for everyone.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
Right. And so we read it and we looked at each other and we said, this is what we want. This is what we want to do. So we made a 5-year plan, and it alternated kids and properties. It went property, baby, property, property, baby. And we had a plan to replace our W-2 income with real estate. And actually we focus in industrial real estate is our specialty. And so that's what we did. We stuck.
Well, I got to stop you there. I just assumed you were going to talk about a single family because that's how a lot of people start. How did you choose industrial?
So we wanted to have something where there were multiple tenants to diversify our risk, because we were very conservative and we didn't like the idea that if you have a vacancy, you could be immediately underwater on your mortgage. And so we wanted the multi-tenant aspect. But we didn't really want to fix toilets or deal with, residents. Yeah. And so we liked the idea of a commercial space because the tenants are, more businesses, and they're easier to deal with. They'll fix their own toilet. And if they don't pay rent, you just kick them out, Yeah. So we liked that. And then we had to decide between industrial and office, for example. And we didn't want office because there was too much tenant improvement involved, too much TI when you turn over the property, too much expense there. And so we really liked the idea of multi-tenant industrial because it's simple. Everyone gets warehouse, mostly warehouse. 80% of their unit is warehouse, small office, 1 bathroom. And, if they're feeling really fancy, the new tenant will want a fresh coat of paint. That's about it. So that's how we got into that.
So tell me about your first purchase. It makes a lot of sense. And I do remember when I was dating someone, long before Rich, his family only did commercial in the Oakland area because for the same reason, they didn't want to deal with tenants, and you can kick business owners out easier if they don't pay. Although I don't know anything about that. I'd love to hear more. And that always stuck with me, but I didn't follow it. We've done a few industrial, but clearly, I wish I had done more when you look at the way that's gone. Because was it already so much growth with warehouse at that time because of all the online shopping and?
Yeah, it wasn't the hot thing that it is now. It was, in fact, it was 2014 and the first property we bought was in Vancouver, Washington. And we almost didn't buy it. Our broker had to talk us into it because when we thought multi-tenant, we were thinking like 5 units. and this one had 25.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and we thought, oh my goodness. And I think it was only 70% leased at the time. And so we were very nervous about that. I mean, who buys a property that's 70% leased for their first deal? But our agent, our broker talked us into it. He said that, they're still coming out of 2008 and that situation, and that the property manager was working on leasing and was going to be able to fill it up. And sure enough, by the time we closed, I think we had maybe one vacancy, but it was mostly filled. So it was a really good way to start things off,
So how did you get the money?
So we honestly just lived below our means. We had good jobs. The sales job and tax credits paid well. And the good thing about being in grad school for 6 years is you live like grad students. In fact, we've had to work very hard to push off that lifestyle. I'm still staring at my husband's 2003 Toyota 4Runner outside, so we're still working on it. But
I still shop at Ross. I understand.
Yeah. So we lived below our means, and just saved up a lot of money to be able to do it.
Okay. So was it like a 20% down payment?
Oh, gee, at that time, I think it was 20. I think it was.
So impressive.
Can't do that anymore,
No. Okay. So then you had a baby and then you did it again?
Yeah. Then we had a baby.
Followed the plan.
Yep. The next property. So we kind of just followed where the market made sense. And so Vancouver, Washington, which is right across from Portland, Oregon, if people aren't aware, was already a very hot market. Yeah. And so we couldn't find anything after that. This was now 2016. And so we just kept where to go next. And we came across Salt Lake City, Utah. And
love Salt Lake.
I love Salt Lake, but I don't know about you, but I cannot find anything for ever since 2016. It's just so hot there still.
It's booming. Yeah. It was the one city that had more job growth during the pandemic than before it.
Makes sense, right? Yeah. So we found a deal there. And with that deal, we really learned the importance of having a local broker. So we tried to use, this sounds funny in retrospect, but we tried to use our Vancouver agent in Salt Lake to buy the property. And we put in an offer, and the seller's agent told us to go jump in a lake, the Salt Lake. No, just kidding. And so I talked to a friend who said, no, Kim, you need to use someone local. So we got our Vancouver agent to find someone in Salt Lake for us and talked to him. And immediately he said, oh, I went to high school with the seller agent. And we got on a call with all of the agents and just asked them, what do you want? What's important to you? And their seller was a syndicator, and he just didn't want there to be trouble. He wanted to be a smooth process and no issues. And so we assured him of that and put in a new offer. And that was our second property.
And have you syndicated yet?
So I should have said on the first property, we did have my parents as an investor.
Okay.
And they invested 30%. But it wasn't really a syndication. They simply got pro rata what they put in. So they put in 30%, they got 30%. And we've done a little friends and family since then, but we really haven't focused on syndicating yet. We're actually thinking about it for this next upcoming acquisition of having just a few investors. But we fortunately haven't had to yet. And so we're still on the fence because we got into this for the freedom of time. As Rich says, work when you want, on what you want, with the people you love. And so I don't want to ruin that. So we've been very hesitant to get into a situation where we don't have that time freedom. So we're looking at it, but we're not sure yet. What are your thoughts on syndication?
Well, I'm a syndicator, so I like to do it, but I'm just curious. Once you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you set up a plan and you seem to have followed it. So in that plan, was there sort of an end? Do you know what I'm saying? Is there a point where you say, okay, I'm financially free, we're done. Now I'm just going to do what I want and no more acquisition?
That is such a perfect question, because that's actually one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you. So we set out a 5-year plan, and the plan was to quit our W-2 jobs. And we achieved that plan at the end of 2018, on time and under budget. And that is exactly what I'm searching for right now. is what is the next 5-year goal? What is the next 5-year goal? So on one hand, I don't want to work 12-hour days. That's not what I'm interested in. But on the other hand, I don't want to retire. I want to work forever, Hopefully this is the first third of my life, and we'll be talking again when we're both 120.
Yes.
But I want something that's interesting and stimulating while also maintaining the freedom that I have right now, freedom of time and freedom of working on what you want. So to answer your question, there was a plan, and now I'm kind of searching for what the next 5 years should be. How do you map things out?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Well, we check the plan every year, every January. Well, we do a year-end wrap up every year to see how we did, and then plan the next year and the next 5 and 10. But I do see this addiction pretty common with people who have far, far exceeded their original goals, myself included. Like you couldn't even envision it maybe back then. Well, maybe you could. And then when you get there, it's kind of like, well, now what? And
what's next?
There's always reevaluation. The important thing, and it sounds like you're doing it, is to start with, what do you want? What do you really want your days to look like?
Yes.
So I'll ask you that. What do you want your days to look like in 5 years from now?
That's so funny. That's what I always say to my friends when they're asking me this question, is I say, get it down to the day. What time do you wake up? All of that. So my days, I want them to be pretty similar to what they are now and what I'm striving for right now. My focus this year is to create room for new growth opportunities and new acquisitions, but at the same time to really focus on delegate and elevate, really focus on delegating the things that I either don't like to do or is just not a good use of my time. But to answer your question, the ideal day is, waking up, doing a miracle morning, some sort of meditation practice, journaling, reading, having some time with my kids where hopefully at some point I'm not yelling at them to put on their socks.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, but my kid's 23 and it takes a little while.
It's a little while. We'll get there. And then a work day that's interesting and has interesting problems, that's stimulating, and then, wrapping up, going to CrossFit and wrapping things up not too late, picking up those kiddos at 3 or 4 and just having a nice fulfilled day, And
if you had a few extra million to spare, what would you do with it?
That's a tough question, because we've been trying to delegate, and as we try to delegate, you try something and you think this really isn't us. So for example, in reference to what would you do with some extra money, you could look at having an au pair, for example, but then we go down that route and we're just like, that's not who we are. I don't want someone sitting at my dinner table with me, or you'd have someone come in and prep your meals. Well, I ended up buying a meal service where the kids' lunches come in the mail. And my daughter was like, these are gross. And so she started making her lunch. So it's hard to say.
Charity, anything that would really just be like, this would be just amazing.
Yeah, probably travel more luxuriously, maybe we went to a real estate conference earlier this year, and they actually required that we bring a nanny with us because our kids were too young. And boy, was that a taste of something good, that was really amazing. I kept saying to my husband, wow, we got dressed in the morning and our children are dressed. How did this happen? We didn't do anything,
Amazing. So, sometimes kids will listen to someone else more than they will to us. Not always, but okay.
Yeah. So
I went to meet another big name syndicator and went to her house for lunch, and she had her chef there, and it was like an organic chef that made this amazing salad and ceviche, and I was like, okay, I have a next level.
Yes. Yeah. What about you? What would you do if you had a couple extra million to spare?
Oh, I would there's people in my life I'd really like to help.
Yes.
Whether that is, handing money isn't usually the best way, but to set them up, somehow helping them get a business started or paying for education. So I think I live with that guilt of having such a great life sometimes,
Yeah.
and just wanting to help people that I know what it feels like to struggle. And so that would be one. Definitely love the idea of more travel. And I understand, I don't even know, this is embarrassing and I'm saying it on this podcast, but Rich and I haven't really had a second honeymoon. Like we travel, but it'll be like weekends, but like a 2-week honeymoon where
Yeah.
we're just unplugged.
Yes.
I haven't done that since our 25-year ago honeymoon. So something like that, like really being able to unplug because we still sort of check in, want to make sure everything's okay. So yeah, that.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you bring up the helping people, because that's actually one of the main reasons I'm considering syndicating, is because I want to go deep rather than wide right now in this season of my life. I want to work with my friends and people I love, and I want to help my friends and people I love, And so we've done a lot of that just casually with our friends. We've pretty much gotten all our friends to leave LA. Sorry, no offense.
I completely understand.
The last one just moved to Nashville, and we've gotten a lot of our friends to invest in real estate. So that is something. It's funny because a lot of the things I would do don't really involve the money. It more involves, like you said, the time freedom and being able to help your friends,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, now you had mentioned that there were some ideas you had for this changing market. Now, a lot of our listeners are in the residential part of real estate, but I'm sure there's all kinds. But how are you preparing for these changing times? Do you think it'll affect your portfolio at all?
Well, that's part of it. So I'll just kind of go through what I'm doing to prepare. So the first thing on my list is to work on building our network. And that doesn't just include, casual relationships. It includes, like I said, going deep rather than wide. So that includes working more with our friends, hiring our friends, things like that. And then just also building your local network, whether it's neighbors or local groups, and just making sure that, it used to be, we used to grow up in villages and surrounded by help. And I don't know about you, but we don't have grandparent help or anything like that, or parental help, or we don't have a lot of family nearby. So building that network locally of people who have your back and you have theirs. So that was kind of the first step. And then that also includes more of a national network. So going to conferences, talking to people, on podcasts and online presence, that kind of thing. So that's the first thing, is to get out there. And then the second area would be wealth preservation. So I kind of include 2 categories in this: wealth and bodily health preservation. Yes. So the first step there is education, which is why I listen to your news podcast all the time, to make sure to stay on top of things, because you don't want to be preparing for something that isn't where the current's going, so staying educated, and then bodily wealth. So staying healthy. I know you and Rich are super into that as well. I'm part of CrossFit. It's a cult. You should join.
Rich is part of the cult.
Oh yeah. Oh, perfect. Of course. And so body health, and then also mental health. I talked earlier about having a morning routine, having that kind of meditation practice where you're checking in, going on walks in nature, that kind of thing. And then also a little bit of preparation, just making sure that you're prepared in case something does happen, in case there is any food shortage or something like that. Let's just say my husband's been really enjoying Sportsman Warehouse. Leave it at that. And then the monetary wealth preservation, that is, to your point, evaluating our portfolio for risk, and kind of 2 levels of risk: vacancy risk, and just seeing how much vacancy can we tolerate there, and then just also leverage and seeing how levered you are, and looking into that, seeing if you need more reserves, things like that. And then the other thing, just a side note on monetary wealth preservation, I also have just to take advantage of the last year of bonus depreciation, because I keep, we're all so focused on growth, and then you forget, my biggest expense was taxes. So
100%. This is the year to go for it. So talk to your CPA for sure to find out how you can get that bonus depreciation, because you can get it on all kinds of things. And this is the year, because you can start getting deals now too. I mean, I just got an email from someone who said they were able to negotiate an apartment they're buying. They negotiated it down by $12 million. So can you imagine the seller?
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So there's opportunity out there for sure.
Yeah, that's encouraging too.
Yeah.
And that leads to the next category is just creating growth opportunities. For us, we started with our lenders and really trying to discuss where they think things are headed, what they think is going to happen with the credit market. I'd be curious to hear what you've heard as well. Our lender didn't actually think the credit market would tighten too much, but he did say that the loan to value is going down a bit, and that the debt service coverage ratio is pretty conservative right now. Have you heard something similar?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're talking with our lenders and just nurturing those existing relationships, but then also looking at alternative lending sources. So we're looking at lines of credit on our existing portfolio, and we're even looking at some HELOCs on some of the single family. We have a couple single family as well. So that if credit markets do tighten, we're able to pull on that, I think, a little bit more easily.
Wonderful. Any more?
Yeah. So in terms of the growth opportunity, increasing deal flow. So really going back through all those brokers, that's actually what I'm doing this morning, is just going through all our lists of brokers and reaching out to them, property managers, lawyers, things like that. And then my last category is just what I mentioned earlier, delegate and elevate. So really trying to get things off your plate that are not a good use of your time or that you're not good at. And my favorite category that I keep forgetting is don't do it. So you have the categories of do it, don't do it, delegate it. And a lot of it just doesn't need to be done. So
It's so true. Now that's a strategic coach thing. Did you do strategic coach?
Oh, that's so funny you brought that up. I just signed up. I'm going in August. Have you done it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you like it?
Oh yeah. I mean,
good.
Dan Sullivan, how do you not love him? But the delegate and elevate it is a really great exercise to look at, what do you love to do and what do you hate to do? And when people are thinking about retiring, they're thinking, it's because I hate to do these things. Well, then have someone else do them. And I mean, just a little example is, the bookkeeping,
Yes.
I can do it. I don't love it, but you know what? There's people who love it.
Yes.
And so that was a big game changer. Of course, it was our first hire, and still, oh my gosh, probably 17 years later, she's still doing it and still loves it and totally owns it and knows more about our finances than we do at this point.
Yeah, that's exactly where we started too. And with Strategic Coach, so the reason I signed up for the program is I was listening to Who Not How, which is a great book.
Another great book.
Yep, I was listening to it while I was skiing in January, and I'm like, this is such a good book. And then every time I went to go do something, I would get mad at myself because I understood I was supposed to find who, not how, but I was having trouble executing. Like the bookkeeping made sense, but then the next level, I was like, well, how do I actually outsource this? And so that's how I ended up signing up for Strategic Coach, and I'm super excited for that.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have been a great inspiration to everyone listening. As far as the taking care of your body, I just did a talk on this, my first talk at the Invest Her conference. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah, about really self-care. And right after that, I actually started this cleanse that Kiyosaki did that he if you look at him recently, he looks amazing.
Yes.
He's lost weight and he looks great. So it's this cleanse called Ultra Healthy Human, and it's basically just lots of vegetables and a little bit of meat, but lots of veggies and a smoothie. And 10 days later, I have no cravings for sugar or coffee or alcohol or anything, just completely gone. Investing in our bodies is probably the most important thing we can do, because when we do, our minds get clear too.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really into that as well. I'm a big fan of the keto diet. And I've started adding some new supplements as well. And I've noticed a huge difference. Creatine has been a great one for both muscle building as well as like cognition as well. But yeah, I think people don't realize that your body fitness is so related to your mental clarity,
and mental health in general.
Mental health in general. So that's a real focus for mine, is like, they say that Alzheimer's is like the third kind of diabetes of the brain. And, if we're all planning another Dan Sullivan concept, if we're all planning to live to 156, we've got to take care of our bodies and our minds. So it's a big focus for me as well.
Yeah. I just looked into one of our Airbnbs after the guest checked out, and it was just full of sodas and chips and candy and cookies and donuts. And I just thought, oh my gosh, their brain fog must be intense right now, and they don't even know it, Anyway, what we eat is so important and truly affects our moods and our clarity and our intelligence, I think.
Yep,
Yeah.
I totally agree. Big focus.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you here. I think you've inspired a lot of people. And if you have any questions about syndications, definitely let me know.
Thank you, Kathy. It's been so great talking with you.
And thank you for joining me here on The Real Wealth Show. You can go to realwealthshow.com to get more in-depth information on how to build your real estate portfolio, and it's free to join. Again, that's realwealthshow.com.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, go to realwealthshow.com.